Father Dean Brackley was born in New York in 1946. In 1964, Brackley entered the Jesuits and was then ordained a priest in 1976. He received his doctorate in religious social ethics from the University of Chicago's Divinity School in 1980. Throughout the 1980s, Brackley worked as an educator at Fordham University. In addition to his teaching at Fordham, Brackley quickly became an advocate to the surrounding communities. For example, he led a leadership program in the South Bronx. His presence played a significant role in deterring the poverty and drug-related violence. Although his early life is very important, most of our course material focused on Brackley's involvement in San Salvador. After graduates of the School of Americas killed 6 Jesuit priests, Brackley quietly and heroically volunteered to take the place of one of the martyred Jesuits. His decision to volunteer his time was modeled after Christ's exhortation to lay down one's life for one's friends. Inquiries determined that the killings were carried out during an extended battle between left-wing insurgents and government forces, part of the country's decade-long civil war. American-trained government soldiers, who considered the Jesuits leftist sympathizers, dragged the 6 priests from their beds in the university dorm, ordered them to lie down on the ground outside, shot them in the head, and then killed the women as potential witnesses. 9 soldiers were charged, but only 2 were convicted in connection with the executions. Both were released in 1993. But the job description for the replacements of the same priests, all of them faculty members at the Universidad Centroamericana, seemed to have his name on it. They wanted a Jesuit. They wanted someone who had a PhD in theology. They wanted someone who spoke Spanish. I started looking around and realized there weren't that many of us. He said he would return in 4 or 5 years. The Jesuits were sometimes referred to as God's Marines because of a 16th century founder's military background and because of their long tradition of intellectual rigor as teachers and missionaries. Father Brackley, who died on October 16th in El Salvador, imbued that nickname with some literal meaning. He admitted to being scared. It was a very dangerous time. Emotions were high on all sides, and Dean brought peacefulness to the situation. He was joined by 5 other Jesuit priest volunteers at the campus residence in El Salvador, including one other American, Reverend Charles Byrne, an academic administrator who later became president of Lemoyne College in Syracuse. Father Byrne died last year. Father Brackley relates his time in the Bronx to El Salvador by saying, "When I worked in South Bronx in New York in the 1980s, I saw how the exclusion of large sectors of population from a decent way of life produces a threefold crumbling of communities, families, and individuals themselves. In El Salvador, it feels like I'm witnessing the globalization of the old South Bronx. In today's more urban society, social exclusion generates tremendous insecurity, rampant delinquency with urban gangs that, in tandem with organized crime, drug dealing, and violence, undermine a state of law. The violence sometimes surpasses that of the civil wars in the 1980s. With 92 homicides per 100,000 young people, El Salvador is amongst the most dangerous places for young people in the world." Father Brackley remained in the job for the rest of his life. A spokesman for the university said the cause of death was pancreatic cancer. He was 65. Father Brackley wrote frequently for the Jesuit weekly magazine America and wrote 2 books for the Catholic theology and priestly discernment while teaching at the university in San Salvador. In the months immediately after the massacre, government soldiers were frequently stationed at the campus. Their presence created an atmosphere of apprehension more than safety. But as it turned out, the killings had marked a turning point in the war, attracting worldwide attention and congressional investigations. A peace accord was signed in 1992.